All right, guys, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the players that maybe we were a little bit higher on, that we're starting to cool off on. Maybe something's happened throughout the preseason, or maybe we've just changed our minds. Let's talk about it. Yes, hello, welcome to the Ball Logic Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Braino, and I'm with Malley again in the studio, mate. We talked recently about the players that we were heating up on. You know, things were getting a bit hot, but, mate, we're going to have to hop into the freezer section of the BWS because we're cooling down pretty quick.
And that's what life's all about, isn't it, mate? It's about ups and downs, and then trying to find that nice middle ground. And you throw a bit of ice on that warm heater, and you're going to find that middle ground. It's all going to kind of even out, and that's what we're trying to do here today. I'm still feeling good about my warm up, guys. I'm excited to see where they actually do end up on my latest big draft board move.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get that draft board and access to all 5 of our draft boards and a consensus board across all 5 of us. The link is in the description below to become a Patreon subscriber. You get that one included as well as a WhatsApp chat to access us, ask us any questions that you have, as well as a ton of other articles coming throughout the preseason to help you with your fantasy drafts. Mate, let's kick things off straight away, hey, and we'll jump into the player that you've cooled off on the most this preseason.
Yeah, look, he wouldn't be the guy I've called off the most, but he is the guy who's highest up the list. And the guy that's highest up the list for me is LeBron James. It's one of those things where you're tuning in to get takes, and this is going to be a non-take because I want to play both sides of the field. I want to say that I'm confident that he's going to be able to do what he did last year, but I also want to say he's getting too old for it, that he's not going to be able to put up another season like he has. He's on the other side of 40 now. What the man's doing is amazing. I don't think anyone can take that away from him. I know people love to have the GOAT debate, and he's done a lot of things to earn a position in that conversation. But he is aging, and he is going to be having a full season or whatever kind of season he can pull out with Luka. We only just in the last episode talked about how Luka didn't really impact Austin Reeves in a negative way over the 23 games they played together. I haven't seen the data. You might be able to find it with your internet abilities. I don't have those. I can barely get onto this chat to have a conversation with you. But I'd like to see how LeBron was affected over that same period of time. It seems clear in LA that the King is starting to move into his deathbed. They know he's not going to be there forever, and they're waiting for the prince to step up and don the crown. Luka is obviously already was a household name before he came to LA, and he's only going to go from strength to strength there. But I think the lovers of Los Angeles Lakers basketball still can't open their hearts up completely to Luka until LeBron James is well and truly retired. That doesn't really impact any of his fantasy value, and that's more what we're here to talk about. The thing with LeBron is he's a little bit like maybe like De'Aaron Fox, where every year they're 2 players I can think of that some statistic that they have completely flip-flops each year. Like, you know, with someone like Fox, great steals guy one year, kind of gone the next. Great three-pointer, gone the next. Great free throw shooter, gone the next. And LeBron's kind of the same. Like, his game has had to change because even though he's still violently explosive, he is an older gentleman now in the NBA lens. He's not that much older than me, but I could never do at any part of my life do what he's doing now. I never will be able to. I just feel like the assists are going to go down. I'm always worried about his shooting. I'm worried about his body. That won't change his ranking. He's still going to be strong per game. But as a guy who I was going to take at the 20-ish mark, I'm now pushing closer to that 30-ish mark. So he's still in that 20 to 30 range. But as a percentage, realistically, if he's going from 20 to 30, he's falling 30% on that kind of on that line there. And yeah, I am cooling down on him.
I can guarantee that if he is sitting at 30 on your draft board, you won't be drafting him this year. Because people will draft on the name, people will draft because it's LeBron James. They'll get him at the end of the second. I've seen people getting him at the turn of the first, just because it's LeBron. And look, to be fair, the bloke's a fine wine. You know, you look at the last 5 seasons, There's no drastic fall off in any category. But again, how often are we going to have this conversation? I feel like we have it every year. Oh, LeBron is getting older, and he just does the same shit. It's crazy how incredibly fit and good this guy is. He played 71 games the year before last and 70 last year. So, it's more a matter of, is he due, which is one of the greatest metrics of all time. He's due to have an injury that's going to be a lasting injury, especially at his age. So, and also, I guess they have the freedom to not have to lean on LeBron so heavily to be competitive this year with Luka there. They've got DeAndre Ayton as well. Hopefully he starts to come good. They've got Austin Reeves there as a great third option if LeBron's out. Rui Hachimura, what are they going to do with him this year? He's an easy plug and play into the starting lineup if LeBron misses any time at all. So they've got those guys to fall back on now, rather than, a couple of years ago, they didn't really have anybody at the 4 or the 3 that they could lean on as much as LeBron. So, I think I've got him at 20 at the moment. I'm okay with him there. I'm probably still happy to take him at the end of the second, but my expectations probably are matching yours somewhat, in a sense that I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up being the 27th best player this year.
I guess too, because I play in so many 20-man leagues, taking him as my first guy as opposed to taking him as, if you're playing in 12, your second, or maybe if you get lucky, your third guy.
Yep.
It really does make a difference there too,
Sure.
I don't know if I could justify him as my first pick in 20-man if I was there on the turn. I'd want someone with a bit more safety, especially because after you leave that top, what have we got, 3, maybe 4 if you want to chuck Luka in there, there really is a closeness between that next big group where if you took someone who I might have as 19 and you put him at 7, you probably wouldn't even get an eyebrow raise from me. And that's kind of just the season that we're looking kind of forward to at the moment. So I go right back to my initial statement. I'm telling you that I'm going down, and then he'll probably end up doing exactly what we think he's going to do. Age will not weary him in any single way. And I'll see you this time next year for the same conversation, Braino.
That's it. What is it? Age will not weary him, nor the years condemn. That'll be that's pretty much the summary of LeBron James. You asked a question around what his stats look like with and without Luka. 23 games with Luka last year, and the only drop-off that I can see right now without doing quick math is his assists dropped by 2 per game.
Yep.
So I think naturally we expect that. When Luka's on the floor, he's going to dominate that category. So, LeBron taking a bit of a backseat when it comes to that.
If that's the only deficit you have when Luka comes on your team, I know that he replaced Anthony Davis. He didn't come from nowhere but 1 out, and what you would assume a stronger, younger player came in. If you're losing 2 assists, I think we all can live with that.
Absolutely, mate. My first one, and the guy probably highest on my board is Kawhi Leonard. I'm cooling on him a little bit more, so just there's a lot of conjecture and a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation floating around on this this contract issue and this secret under the table money, sponsorship money, all this other shit. Like I'm not here to talk about that, but what I am here to talk about is the fact that regardless of whether he wants to play back-to-backs or not, it doesn't look like the Clippers are going to let him. And, he did play some back-to-backs at the back end of last year, and people go on about his injuries and all that kind of shit. When he came back last year, I think it was after Christmas or might have been in December, he played, I think, 87% of games available for the rest of the year after January. So, it's not like he's this guy that missed a shit load of time. He played 68 games the year before that, before he got injured and missed the rest of the year. So it's not like he's constantly missing games. And often he was trying to play back-to-backs last year, but the comments out of the Clippers organization are that they're probably going to be holding him back somewhat. They're going to have a leash on him this year. So that concerns me when initially I was looking at taking him at the back end of the second, early third. He's probably dropped about 10 spots for me. I think if he's still there late third, I could probably get around maybe 30 to 35. But any earlier than that, for a guy who's not going to play back-to-backs, that's probably just not... Games played is probably the biggest concern for me if he's not playing back-to-backs. And I guess one thing to note is that the Clippers also have the most back-to-backs in the competition this year. Nice. So not a good spot for a guy like Kawhi who's going to be managed to keep him on the court. I guess the positive is that he trained all the way through the end of the playoff period to simulate what it'd look like to go that deep into the competition. Whether they get there or not, that's another question. But just enough question marks for me around his body and around the way he's going to be managed to move out of that second round period for me.
And a simulation is exactly what it is. I'm sure he didn't have all the Oklahoma City players come straight from their game over to his home court and go, do you guys mind if we verse each other? Because I got some neighborhood kids who I saw in various NBA jerseys to come around to my house and verse me so that I'm training the same time as I would if I was still playing. But you look at these teams, you look at Houston, you look at the Lakers, who we only just talked about with LeBron and how much deeper they've got. You look at the Clippers, who have strengthened and deepened their roster everywhere. They've got backup bench players who in most other teams have and would be starting players. And they're all at liberty now that if someone does get an injury, like a LeBron James, like a Kawhi Leonard, they have that flexibility. We can nearly pencil them in now for a playoff berth. Mm-hmm. Like they could have 2 major injuries and still get there. And that's a luxury that affords them the ability to have these players either back-to-backs, sit games, or if they're injured and they go, this is going to be a 2-week recovery, they go bung an extra week on there, who cares? OKC are kind of the exemption to that rule. They know that they're going to make the finals again and their players will still play, but they have youth on their side. It'll be interesting. I don't want to veer too much off the conversation, but it'll be interesting this year to see if they make any changes now that they've got a chip, whether they play things a little bit differently.
For sure. Yeah, maybe a little bit more cautiously. Who knows? Maybe they'll be trying to go back-to-back as hard as they can. But look, I love Kawhi. I'm a huge Kawhi fan. And I'll probably let my bias towards my favoritism as a player impact my fantasy ranking when it comes to Kawhi. He hasn't dropped heaps, but he's dropped down to 29 for me. I started him at 20. So not the end of the world, but enough to get out of the second round for me just based on that body, mate. Who's your next one?
Yeah, just back on him before I go on to my second guy. Anyone who's a giant weirdo but is loved by Greg Popovich is a guy who's all right in my book. So, I feel the same way about him. I feel like Greg Popovich is a straight shooter, and if he seems to like someone, they must be a good guy. My second guy, another one, we're going down that injury rabbit hole as well, is Kristaps Porzingis. And maybe he is affected by this Houston Lakers, Clippers, OKC effect, where his team, although in a different division, they are stronger now, and they have a very capable potential starting center in Okongwu. They have an extremely capable, potentially you could argue second best player on their team, power forward in Jalen Johnson. They have flexibility there to have Porzingis sit. And that is probably why my cooling on him has come from. Not because I'm suddenly like, oh, you know what? Actually, Kristaps Porzingis, I think he gets injured. I've always known that about him. He's a brutal man. I worry too because they went relatively deep into FIBA that he played plenty of games too. Maybe that weighs a little on my conscience and that might have kind of affected my decision making as well. Yep. He looks spry and sprightly there, but he was playing with his home country's colours, and I think that always gives you some superpowers. When he goes to Atlanta, it's not his hometown. He doesn't have any particular, anything really left to prove in his career. He's not a young upstart. I think they'll do the same thing and they'll be extra cautious with him. So that's probably where my cooling is coming from. Not because I think he will lose what he's able to do. He's still the unicorn. He's still a man who can get blocks and defend the paint and then get back on the other side and sink a three. He's very able in that category. I had him, I'm probably going to move him closer to the 50 mark now, where I had him maybe a little closer to the 40 mark. So he's probably, again, maybe going to potentially drop that 10 kind of ranking positions.
Yep.
How do you feel about him? You have the same sort of nerves, or?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can be friends anymore because I feel like I love Kristaps Porzingis I'm an Atlanta supporter, so I can't necessarily speak without bias on this one. But I honestly think he does so much for Trey this year, and I'm more thinking maybe Trey does a lot for him too. Like, has he ever really had a point guard on his team that can drive to the rim, finish at the rim as well, that can assist? And has Trey ever had a popper? in his team. No, he hasn't. He hasn't really. Like, he's been stuck with, Okongwu's kind of stretched his game out a little bit, but he's had Clint Capella as the main centre in the pick and roll for the last 3-4 seasons. Like, being able to have a Kristaps and maybe they work well together, that Kristaps can spread the floor, that the other starting centres at Atlanta haven't been able to do for the last half decade. Does that make Kristaps a better option? Probably not. But at the same time, I feel like they're probably going to make each other better. I've got him at 36 at the moment. I'm not saying I've got him in the top 2 rounds, but I like what he can do. It's just, the body. I agree on the body. That's the question mark, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think too. I'm having visions here of Trey giving the little secret nod to Capella, like, go for it. I'm gonna do you a little favor here. I'm gonna put one right above the rim, and you just poke it through. And Capella being like, absolutely not, no. Starts running, but then continues to run and goes and sits on the bench. He doesn't even get off the ground, and I think that will be a nice change for him. And you're right. Porzingis played with Luka, who's another excellent distributor, but he's not really for a guy who is basically playing point guard now. He's not a true point guard in the sense like Trey is. And I think you're right. This will open up Kristaps' game. So I think his per game numbers will probably increase, which will look great for him on the rankings at the end of the year. But if you're playing only every second game, it's really hard to beat people in fantasy, especially if you're in weekly matchups, Roto. Well, even in Roto, that hurts because you're looking at stat accumulation. But it does really hurt you when you're like, oh, great, here we go. I'm finally going to get a win this round. Things are looking up Millhouse, and then Kristaps goes, this is the week that I don't play. And you go, well, there goes my third best player.
Yep. Atlanta have a 4-game week. Kristaps plays at the start of the week and misses the last 3, and you lose your matchup by 4 rebounds. That's typical Kristaps Porzingis. Look, I love him as a player. I think he's a great get for Atlanta. I still think he's probably, when you look at the end of season rankings, he hasn't had a season outside the top 34 in the last 5 years. So for me, I'm like, I'm happy to draft him around that mark. If he has his worst season ever, I've still done okay. But again, it's the games played. He hasn't played more than 65 games in a season in the last 5 years. So that's got to weigh it up. If he drops into the 40s, I'm grabbing him and I'm not even thinking twice.
I know before we said that we try not to read the tea leaves too much, but if someone gets the tea leaves and opens your eyelid and basically shoves them down in that crevice that your eye is supposed to be in, you're going to have to read them, And,
you do.
And you're right. If he hasn't played 65 games, well, not collectively, but statistically over the last averaging five seasons, he's not Benjamin Button. He's not going backwards. He's only getting older. His body's getting more worn down.
But we do need to look at the stats and the ranking accumulation that you can get from having a beard too, right? Because a lot of these seasons he didn't have a beard, and now he does, right? So we've got to take that. He's more manly. Maybe he's got a little bit more beef on the bone. Beards do good things to a lot of people.
A little bit more Viking, and that's always good. You want a Viking out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking from 2 red facial head men.
That's us. Yeah. Don't take it. Exactly, mate. Let's follow the injury route. It's Joel Embiid, and this one doesn't need tea leaves. This one you don't even need to go to a psychic. You don't need to. You could come up with this yourself pretty quickly. His last 2 seasons, he's played 58 games combined, and his per game numbers are amazing. He is a first round pick if he plays games. I don't think he does. Again, I think his time at Philly is coming to an end. I think there is very minimal motivation for him to want to get on the floor for Philly. I just don't love the scenario that he's in at the moment. He's come out the Daryl Morey's come out and basically said, Embiid's on track to play game 1. He's ready to start the season, blah, blah, blah. And then Joel Embiid came out 2 weeks later and said, no, I'm going to be taking my time with this rehab. I'm going to make sure I get this right. So whilst Embiid seems to be in control of this rehab process and in control of his body, which is great, maybe it's not so great for fantasy basketball because maybe he will be a little bit more patient. Will it get him out on the floor more? Honestly, I'm going to say no. And I think there's enough data to suggest that we're going to be pretty close to spot on. I started with him because he's such a good player. I'm like, maybe this could be the year that he gets back out on the court. And I'm like, who the fuck am I kidding? I'm kidding myself if I think that anything's going to change from the last 2 seasons. I think I would be very, very surprised, and I'm willing to take a pretty hefty bet. We can have a fun bet with whoever wants to hop in the comments, whatever it be, that Embiid doesn't play more than 50 games this season. I'm pretty confident that he won't. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel much the same. I was just thinking before that James Harden must have been stoked when Embiid called Daryl Morey out for being a liar. There must have been some big tips in the lap dancing suite that night from James as he's enjoying that sweet justice. I think so too. Like, I'm very glad that he got his MVP before his body completely shut down him. I think you're right. I think that he's not totally motivated to do more than what his body can handle there at the moment. His field goal percentage was really nasty last year. I didn't really realize that because I didn't have him on any of my teams until the end. Looking back over the end of the year statistics, I'm like, ouch, like, where did that go? A lot of what's made him great has kind of fallen off. And I don't know that I'm particularly cooling on him, but maybe that's only because I was already as cold as I can probably get. And I'm not one of those, this isn't a do not draft guy. If you can get him outside the 50, like, why not? Like, you can make that up if he doesn't play. I think the thing that always worries me with him, and you're probably the same, and I tell you, we're all the same, you don't want him, but you wish no one else would take him. I just wish he was wiped off the board, because all it takes is us to be a bit wrong here and him to go, all right, I'm going to play 65 games and just go back to being an MVP guy, which he's not that far removed from. And then we're all go, damn it, that guy who we're like, look at this jokester picking him up at 47.
He's a league winner.
All of a sudden, and he wins. And that's it's annoying that, it's one of the things that makes his game great is also one of the things that makes it extremely frustrating that someone can roll those dice and come off with the win. But
he's it's LaMelo Ball as another guy that, if he plays 65 games, he wins you a league. Embiid will win you a league if he plays 65. He'll win you a league if he plays 55 games. And that's the difference, and I think I'm not willing to take that risk, but somebody else will, and it will either be disastrous for them or they'll be walking away with the cash from their league. I don't think there's anything in between.
No, and it's the jealous ex-boyfriend effect where you don't want anyone else to have them, but you don't want them, and that's Embiid right there. Can't we just all gentlemanly agree that no one will take him, no one will pick him up if all of a sudden he goes back? Yeah.
Who's your last one, mate? Who we got?
My last one is another man that I think we've forgotten his past a little bit too quickly as a kind of soft segue into Miles Bridges. I don't like that we're not talking about him just being a complete flog who's a woman basher, but that seemed to all be, unfortunately, water under the bridges. See what I did there?
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah,
you can enjoy that now and later. He for me, I'm probably going to move him outside the 70, top 70 kind of range. The reason I'm feeling that way is it really doesn't seem like it'll take a lot for him to. The realizations I probably had since I had him higher in the ranking is that if Ball plays a stronger season, if Brandon gets there and is able to stick around for longer than he did last season, that pushes Miles Bridges back to that third piece. Without looking at the numbers, and you'll be able to pull them up for me, can assure you that Miles Bridges did his nastiest of work last year when one or both of those two guys were out. He was able to up his passing. He was able to up his rebounding. Somehow he was getting like defensive numbers, which hasn't really been part of his game. He was being able to get points from everywhere. He was going to the line. He really was balling out. Like, I think he'd put his personal stuff behind him. He had opportunity. It was kind of realistically the perfect fantasy basketball storm where everything just kind of worked his way. And I think a lot of those doors are closing, like he isn't going to be the number one option, hopefully at any point in this season, all things, God willing and the river don't rise type deal. But I think all the things he did were kind of unrealistic. I have faith in those two young boys being able to hold it together a little more. Obviously, there's huge deficiencies at center. That's not something he can do. He can't play a small ball center. But at the same time, that has a flow-on effect as well. I wish they get a better center in so I can completely shut the door on Miles Bridges. But at this stage, he's still in that kind of 70 range, but he's on the north side instead of the south side. He's not close to my number one. He's moving away from my number one pick.
Yeah.
The other thing too,
I'm with you.
The other thing too is I just think that's a zone where a lot of these guys that you talked about warming up to are coming in front of him. So even if you didn't have any change of heart, like we talked about in the last episode, you keep dragging players in front of him, and all of a sudden someone who you haven't purposely moved down your board moves 6 or 7 places just because you'll keep putting guys in front of him. And then you have that realization, damn, I got Bridges at like 83. What the hell happened there? I thought I had him at 70. And you go, oh, that's right. Martis Bazelis moved in front, and I put some more on Advia, and I, all these kind of Pritchard. Yeah. And not that, that kind of just works out that way.
100%. DeAndre Ayton seems to be that guy on my board that just I didn't realise he was down 13 spots. So that kind of comes to your point that he becomes collateral damage. Darius Garland as well. It becomes collateral damage on your board just by moving people ahead of him. So, But yeah, no, I'm with you on the Miles Bridges camp. I am not a man to let my morals get in the way of winning cash in my basketball league. So I'm more than happy to draft him. I don't give a shit if you're a shit bloke. And it's very clear he's a shit bloke. But I don't care if I'm not somebody who will let my morals get in the way of winning money in my fantasy basketball league. I'll give you that for free. I'll take him where I have to take him. My last one is Nikola Vucevic. And this is probably more an error on initial ranking rather than the fact that I'm cooling. But it's the contract situation and just the number of question marks of what's going to happen in Chicago. Is he going to be there in Chicago this year? Nobody knows. There's been no confirmation. There's been no word at all. He's just retired from international basketball as well, so he's going to continue to play in the NBA, of course. But he had some career bests last year. Like his field goal percentage across 73 games was .530 on 14 shots per game. There is no way in the world that he can maintain that this year. So that comes back. 1.8 threes, that'll probably come back a little bit. He was an 18 point, 10 rebound guy with 3 assists per game, 0.8 steal, 0.7 blocks. I don't think anything else moves there. And that was good enough for the 28th best player. But I think when the field goal percentage comes back to around that 480, 490 mark, which is what he's across his career, and the threes come back a little bit, I think he becomes around that kind of 40th to 50th best player. So it's more a matter of me looking at last year and going, fuck, he had a good year last year. And looking at the last 5 seasons and going, well, he's only had one season where he's been outside the top 38. And I got a little bit excited about Vooch, and then I remembered, hang on a sec, he might not even be in Chicago. That's probably a risk maybe if he ends up on a team where he ends up being the backup center and I draft him in the 30s. That then becomes a problem to a point where I've just wasted a pick and potentially, I don't want to say lost my league, but definitely put myself in a shittier spot. So he's dropped back a fair bit for me, Vooch. Dropped back 20 places, which is pretty significant. And I had him at 28. Now he's at around that 48 mark. So is there anything I'm missing there, or you're pretty cold on Vooch from what I'm looking at?
No, I'm cold as well. I probably haven't moved him too much. But I think, isn't it funny that with age is such a huge contextual factor for someone who there's whispers around getting a mid-season trade. When you talk about it, someone like Kuminga, you go, cool, like he could go, the world is his oyster. The pastures are always going to be greener for a young man. And when you look at someone like Vooch, who had nearly a career year across the board, you go, man, it's only going to be doom and gloom for him. Like he's doing great things on a crappy team, as opposed to great things on a strong team who just can't work him into a roster. And that's never a winning combination. He may end up being like, I'd say I put him in the same boat as someone like a Brooks, where, he's going to be put into a team as the potential second option behind a younger, more advanced model of themselves. And he's going to be great for a playoff driven team. He's an old hat, and he obviously has been around for a while, and he's played in different roles in different cities. So I think he'd be perfect at that role. Unfortunately, that's damaging for fantasy basketball.
It is. Yeah, and look, we're not talking about a guy you can get with your 80th pick. We're talking about a guy that potentially I was looking to take in the first 3 rounds, and that for me is just probably too early. So correction, we'll call it. Not a cooling off, just a correction on an initial error with our first draft board. But mate, that's 6. Another 6 guys we've cooled on. There's going to be more coming. I'm certain of that. You're about to make some changes to your draft board this afternoon. I'm looking forward to seeing what that all looks like. We'll get an updated draft board up by the end of the weekend as well across all 5 of our experts who have put 168 players deep on where we think these guys are going to land, or where we're going to take them, or willing to take them in our fantasy basketball drafts this year, mate. Any final words on the cooling off guys, the warming up guys?
Only that I'm really looking forward to, because the 5 of us don't really have conversations about where we're putting these guys. So I have no idea until your draft board, edits come out what you're thinking. which is exciting because I hope there are some names that all 5 of us cool and warm on, where we can go, all right, that's 5 of us, our 5 combined ugly heads have kind of made a decision here. That's got to be true. And those ones, I'll be also interested in the ones that I've cooled on that the 4 of you are like, oh, keep it in the exact same, because that'll put, give me a little bit of food for thought.
Yep, absolutely. So you can get that draft board. Link is in the description below to become a Patreon subscriber. You get access to WhatsApp to access us whenever you want, ask us any questions that you have, as well as plenty of articles we'll be bringing out, as well as our consensus draft board. So you can get that there. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me, Malley. It's been fun. I'm sure we'll have a updated rankings. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a rankings debate on the guys that we're way off on when we get a little bit closer to the season starting. That should be good fun. Get as many of the guys on as possible to do that. That'd be good. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit the subscribe button, the like button's down below. Give it a thumbs up, and hit that hype button for us on YouTube. We'll see you for the next one.